Hello, this is Curt Pringle, and thank you for tuning in to the Talking Issues series. Here we get a chance to talk about public policy issues in California, and probably one that a lot of people don't see as clearly as they should is really how America receives goods, imports from around the world, and really Southern California's importance in that. So it's my pleasure today to have Dr. Noel Hacegaba, the CEO of the Port of Long Beach. And when you think about ports, we all look at that massive port structure, Long Beach and Los Angeles, and together they represent the largest entry port in America. And the Port of Long Beach is such a significant part of that. And I want to make sure you see Dr. Hacegaba. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Curt. It's always a pleasure to see you, and I'm honored to be on your podcast.
Yes, no, great that you're here. I know first of the year you were elevated from your chief operating officer position to the CEO position. So congratulations on that.
To that, honored and grateful.
And so tell everybody, why is the Port of Long Beach important?
Well, in general, ports are important. In fact, they're so important, ports are in the word important, if we think about it. We are a massive...
That's the first time you said that?
I actually used that line last week in D.C. I was on a panel. I was able to use it then, and I think we used it in one of our social media posts. But it really makes sense when you think about what a port does to the regional and national economy. The Port of Long Beach alone, Curt, we're responsible for 2.7 million jobs across the U.S. All the containers that cross our docks annually reach all 435 congressional districts. That's $300 billion worth of goods that enter the country through our gateway.
Yeah, that's great. So, and that represents, people can see that in a container size concept of what's imported, even though there's other things imported here. But in fact, what is it? You were right around 10 million containers last year?
Yeah, last year, calendar year 2025, we ended the year 9.9 million TEUs. We were 6-7 ships.
So I'm proud of that.
6-7 ships away from 10 million, which is our strongest year to date.
Yeah. And we'll touch on that in a minute when we talk about tariffs and such. But between you and your sister port right next door to the Port of LA, that's about 20 million containers.
Right.
And what other than containers? I think people can just understand there's a lot of mystery in what those containers hold, but there's also other imports that come in there, right? So
that's right.
Do you receive gas products or other type of minerals?
We do. So technically we're considered, even though about 3/4 of our cargo is containerized, we're still considered a diversified port. So in addition to goods that arrive in containers, we import a lot of vehicles, lumber, a lot of energy product, petroleum, oil. We also import a lot of big pieces of machinery that don't necessarily fit inside a container. That's brake bulk, liquid bulk, et cetera. So about 1/4 of all of our
that's a lot. Again, we see the container ships and we just assume that is the bulk of the shipment, and it might be, but still 1/4 when you're talking about the volume to bring in. So if we could look at the port collection of LA and Long Beach ports together, what other ports are there on the West Coast? Seattle, Oakland, Ensenada.
There are 11 major deep water ports in California. In fact, I have the great honor of serving as president of the California Association of Port Authorities. And together, California's 11 ports are vital. We are the backbone to the state's economy, which happens to be the world's 4th largest economy. So a massive economic.
So California has 11 ports.
Yes.
And then on the West Coast, that also through Oregon and Washington.
Yeah. So, for example, in the PNW, you have the Northwest Seaport Lines. That's the ports of Seattle and Tacoma combined.
Okay.
Oregon has a couple of ports as well. So you have on the West Coast approximately 20 ports.
Okay. Now, this is just from my understanding. I'm contemplating 11 ports in California. All the West Coast ports do therefore more than half of all imports. Overseas imports come through West Coast ports. Is that?
When you look at California's ports alone, we account for about half of the nation's
is that right?
waterborne imports. Massive gateway, right, as a state.
Of course.
So having all this port system in California, Curt, is a huge boon. for the state economy.
Yes.
And again, just thinking about all the jobs created, the economic activity that's catalyzed through port activity, it's massive.
Yeah, so we're on the Pacific. We understand such a great manufacturing importer to us are all many significant Asian countries. So where percentage-wise do most of the freight cargo come from?
So for us, the Port of Long Beach today, China by itself accounts for about 60% of our cargo, and that's both imports and exports. But that's shifting. Back in 2019, China alone accounted for about 70% of our business.
Hmm.
So we've seen a 10 percentage point drop in China just in the last 6 years. And that's the reason, by the way, why we are shifting. We're updating our playbook and our game plan. I'm using a lot of football metaphors and analogies. So we've reset our goal line. We have a new vision that I just presented in January at our State of the Port. I call it the 2050 vision. And basically, we're planning to double our container throughput to 20 million container units by 2050. And as part of that, we're going to be building the port of the future, a port that's going to be fast, efficient, reliable, clean, safe, secure, resilient, and innovative. And we get to do that at the Port of Long Beach. It's going to be a fun 24 years.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, so we can all imagine China being the largest exporter to us and recipient at our port. So what other Asian countries are very significant in the amount of traffic coming here?
When you look at our top trading partners, of course, China is far and away number one. Second to them, we see countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Japan, Korea, all in Asia. About 98% of our cargo is to or from Asia. And going back to the point about China, the reason the shift from China to Southeast Asia is so important to us is because as a gateway, we have a certain value proposition that we offer our customers. These are the shippers. Think the big importers like Target, Walmart, Home Depot. When cargo comes from Southeast Asia compared to China, that adds 2 to 3 days on the water. So it makes our supply chain less competitive. So the reason why we're investing so aggressively in our port, over the next 10 years, we're going to be investing $3.2 billion. The centerpiece of that is one project. That's our Pier Beyond Dock Rail Support Facility. And we're basically building the largest in-port rail yard in the world. And it's going to triple our capacity, and it's going to basically expedite our ability to move containers right from a ship to a train. Something that typically takes 4 days today, Curt, we're going to get that down to 24 hours.
So as cargo comes here, as containers come here, they're either put on trucks or trains, and then the trains primarily go to a centralized train yard now, right? Somewhere closer near downtown LA. Is that right?
Yes. So cargo follows different paths. The split between cargo that leaves the port on a truck versus train, right now it's about 75-25. With projects like our Pier Beyond Dock Rail Support Facility, our goal is to get the percentage of containers that leave the port on a train to about 35% or more. The reason that's important is because that will enable us to move those containers from Long Beach to all the key inland hubs, whether it's Chicago, Columbus, Kansas City, Memphis, Dallas. It expedites the movement of cargo, gets it to the destination sooner, faster, and that speed, that velocity makes us more competitive.
Yeah. So right now, when cargo goes by train, it will go to all those inland connections as you get reference, right? Is there a difference between cargo that's put on a train where it ends up and cargo that's put on a truck?
Yeah, so when a container leaves the port on a truck, it can either go to the Inland Empire, which is where most of the containers land. And
those are what? Big distribution centers?
Big distribution centers,
pack it,
warehouses. In many cases, it's transloaded, right? So the goods are removed from an international container and then they're packed into a domestic container, right? And those are the 53-footers that you typically see on the freeways, right? Going from California to other parts of the country. So it really depends on the shipper. The shipper is the one who decides where they're going to stage that first sorting of goods. Most of the time it's in the Inland Empire, but the cargo that needs to get to destination, the ultimate destination faster, that's what leaves the port on a train. And that's what we as a port complex, if we're going to double our throughput to 20 million container units, Kurt, without necessarily doubling our real estate, the best way to do that is by moving more containers on a train. And that's why I say that speed of market is a key to our success. Rail connectivity is a key to our future.
Yeah. There's no question how important the port is to the overall country economy or the state's economy. So, being the former mayor of Anaheim, all the trains that come through Anaheim, pretty much now there's mostly all grade separated, elements of that rail. But people may think, adding more on trains will have a greater impact. But really, doesn't it show that the truck traffic that leaves is really some of the congestion that people feel more in terms of cargo getting through, different cities?
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits and advantages to moving cargo on a train versus a truck, right? For one, less congestion on the roadways. Two, it's cleaner. We estimate that a train, for example, one train can replace up to 750 truck trips, and it's faster. When you think about all the key inland rail hubs, right, that most of this cargo is destined for, it's just faster to get there on a train. And I will also say this, that the Class 1 railroads themselves, they're looking at what we're doing in the Port of Long Beach. They see the value of pure beat. And so what they're doing is they're trying to synergize with their own investments. BNSF Railway, for example, is developing their Barstow International Gateway project. That's within 100 miles from our port complex. They're building out this 4,000-acre rail yard. And so what that does for a port like us is, instead of sorting and staging all those containers in the port, as soon as they're off of a ship, put them on a train, and they leave for Barstow International Gateway, as an example. It just makes the whole process.
And then in Barstow, away from a lot of people and interaction with passenger cars and such, you're able to do that resorting out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was very funny when, as they were increasing rail through the canyon in Anaheim and Yorba Linda and then Riverside, people were talking about the shift between truck and train traffic. And actually, the truck traffic is reduced in that 91 corridor because of the way station there, and because a lot of truckers want to avoid that, versus the 60. So you could see the truck traffic increase based upon, so sometimes we don't see the full truck traffic that could impact us. It's just based upon those other effects. So when the Anaheim way station was on, more trucks would avoid it by going up the 60.
Interesting.
Then coming down the 91. So, I could just see that a better solution is to get more shipment on trains versus adding more trucks to the road. That's where people are going to be interactive with that. So trains also can be electric, right? Is BNSF putting in a lot of electric engines? And
Not quite yet. The technology is still evolving. We have seen, electric locomotives for short haul rail operations, but nothing commercially viable yet. But that's the goal, right? When you think about the port of the future, it's going to be clean. Already the twin ports in Southern California are leading the way globally, right? We're the cleanest ports, and we have very bold goals to get us there sooner. And so this is part of our plan, right? As we double our capacity, we're going to continue to be a leader in the green space and reduce emissions along the way to zero.
So I saw on your social media posts, so congratulations to your team. You were at the Tesla truck factory in Nevada.
That's right.
For the electric truck. How is that? Is that going to be something incorporated? Do you see that as a significant step in terms of sustainability and of those vehicles?
So the two ports, based on the last Clean Air Action Plan that was adopted back in 2017, we set a goal of getting to zero emissions trucks by 2035. Today, of the 17,000 trucks or so that do business at the port complex, LA Long Beach, we have about 600 trucks that are zero emissions.
Yeah.
We've been exploring different strategies to help accelerate the transition. So in Long Beach, for example, Curt, we have the highest number of charging stations of any port in the world. We're up to 180. Our goal is to get to 400. And so we're doing our part. In addition, we're also offering vouchers to help the motor carriers transition to cleaner trucks. But what has been a challenge has been access to these trucks.
And enough type of electric trucks on
The
the market.
cost is 2, sometimes 3x what a conventional diesel truck is. So the reason I went to the Tesla Gigafactory, I have been hearing from our motor carriers that the product that they're manufacturing there offers a much greater range at a lower cost, and the time it takes to charge the batteries is less. So I wanted to go up and see it myself. And I was part of a delegation that included leadership from the California Energy Commission, the Public Utilities Commission, the California Legislature, CalSTA. And what I saw in their crew was incredible. I mean, we saw the trucks.
Do you think they're going to match the promises?
Well, we'll see. I mean, everything I heard was very encouraging. They have some of their electric semis already in deployment, but many of our motor carriers, I would say the majority of our motor carriers that are taking advantage of the vouchers that the Port of Long Beach offers, and they're stacking them with the state of California's vouchers, they're ordering these Tesla trucks.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So how far are that truck range? I mean, is it, can you add or reduce batteries on the vehicle itself, or are they all standard size batteries?
So they've got 2 different versions of the truck. The one that has the longest range gets up to about 500 miles, which is huge. That really is significant.
Yeah. So it also argues or demonstrates why train travel by some of the freight is much more significant.
That's correct.
Be able to cover that territory as opposed to just get out into Arizona and then stop.
Correct.
That's where it is. So answer me this. Who owns a lot of products come through the port that are retail good products that are sold in stores that everybody's familiar with, from Best Buy to Walmart? And who owns the products that are in those containers? Does the retailer own them when they are put in the container leaving their manufacturer destination before they come here, or who owns that product primarily?
Yeah. So in our world, we have different, words and names for the different partners. The BCO, the beneficial cargo owner, is the entity that owns the goods inside those containers. Most of the time, these are your big box retailers, right? Because they're the largest importers, your Targets, your Walmarts, your Home Depots. And so they're the ones who pay an ocean carrier, also known as a shipping line, to transport that container from overseas on a ship here to the port complex. And then they have a decision point. They can either hire their own trucking company, or they can ship it on a train to a final destination, or they can have the ocean carrier contract a trucking company. So there's different iterations, if you will.
Right.
But the owner itself is the BCO. This is a shipper.
I see. So they take ownership from the manufacturer. Once it gets on the shipping container, they take ownership, and then the question is, when it gets here, it could go either way.
Correct. Yeah. Whether it leaves a port on a truck or on a train, who contracts the trucking company, for example, where it ends up ultimately, those are the decisions they make.
Yeah. The other significant thing is, a lot of people look at one-way containers, right? But all of them pretty much are two ways, aren't they? I mean, they have to go back.
Yeah.
So what is being shipped back in those containers, and what percentage of them are empty?
Yeah, the ratio between imports and exports, right? It's about 3-1, or these days probably closer to 4-1, just because of the trade and the tariff situation that we're in. So we export a lot of California fresh air, because these are empty containers that are repositioned. They're needed in Asia so that they can be used to send imports back, or exports, which would be imports for us. But we're constantly looking for ways to change the ratio, because if you think about it, Curt, U.S. exporters are the small businesses. These are the companies that support American jobs. And if we can support the U.S. exporter, put them in a position to succeed, and get those containers that arrive through our port, and get the same containers back through our port in the form of an export, then there's a win-win-win. And so we're constantly looking for ways to do that.
And you can adjust pricing to incentivize certain movement or certain goods? Is that?
There are a number of ways to do that. So the lever that we like to pull is value proposition, right? Which is the velocity. If we can show the shipper, whether it's an importer or an exporter, that their container and the goods inside their container are going to move faster, it's going to be more predictable, reliable, efficient. That's the supply chain. That's the gateway that they choose. And so we're constantly looking for ways to build our value proposition, right? Again, going back to football, we reset our goal line to 2050. We're updating our playbook, and we're going to be expanding our game plan as well.
So what type of goods leave your port? I know one of my friends in Anaheim here, George Adams, who recycles a lot of metal products and things like that. He fills up a number of those containers, I think, as they head out. But are there manufactured goods that are going, back across to Asia?
We do have some. Most of our exports are raw materials, right? In the case of George, and recycling, steel, scrap, and so forth. We do export, obviously, vehicles. We export a lot of agricultural product. There's a high demand for U.S. foods and agriculture. Soybeans, for example, very popular across Asia. So most of our exports, for that reason, are either fall into the bucket of raw materials that are needed for fabrication and manufacturing overseas, or foods and ag products that people enjoy and consume overseas.
Right. So some of the, I think some people paid a lot more attention to port activities during some of those supply chain challenges a couple of years ago. And maybe you could just share briefly, a lot of goods, pieces of larger products are manufactured in Asia, and then they came here and assembled here and assembled in Mexico or something like that. But to folks who saw from Long Beach all the way down to San Clemente, the backup of container ships, drew a lot of people's attention, maybe for the first time, to all the activity that really is happening in Long Beach. So what caused some of that, and how was the solution found? And then today, nobody in San Clemente sees container ships necessarily out there. So.
Yeah, I love the question because it highlights what I call the transition. For most of our history, ports like ours were invisible.
Yeah.
No one really thought about ports, cared about ports. We would just go to the store, pick up an item from the shelf that said made in Vietnam, and not even think about how it got here. The supply chain crisis during the pandemic changed all of that. All of a sudden, ports like ours went from being invisible to being infamous. I say infamous because now people were blaming us. They would go to the store, the shelves were bare, or they would go to a Home Depot to buy an appliance, and they were told you're going to have to wait 6-9 months. And the store clerk would say it's stuck somewhere in the port, right?
So my wife was thinking about buying this one car, and they said the one car would be available. You can get it on a 3-year lease, but it doesn't have a certain chip.
Oh.
So when the chips come in, you can bring the car in. And I asked, how long would it take for the chips to arrive? Well, somewhere between 2 and 3 years. And the problem is it was a 3-year lease, so it's hard to contemplate that. But you become much more aware of all of the intricacies of importing and engagement and such. And I think we all felt it right at the pandemic time.
Yeah, everyone these days, everyone understands supply chain.
Yeah.
They understand ports. So to finish the story, when things really got bad at the port, and by the way, the reason things got so bad is because of warehouses. If you remember, during the pandemic, a lot of workers were confined to their homes. So they had labor shortages at the warehouses and distribution centers. So their hours of operation were more limited. So what happened is when capacity shrunk at the warehouses, containers started piling up at the port. And then there was this upstream effect where now ships were effectively warehouses. That's why they were lining up all the way to OSC. So for a period of time, the Port of Long Beach was the Port of Orange County.
Yeah.
Because you could see those 109 ships all across, right?
You say 109, was that the peak?
That was the peak.
Wow.
And people were asking me during the crisis, what's normal? On a normal day, how many ships at anchor? The answer was 0. So we're 109 ships above normal. But here's the good news. We learned many lessons from that experience. Last year, Port of Long Beach, record year, 9.9 million TEUs. No congestion, no backlogs, no delays. Your wife wouldn't have to wait 3 years to get the chip.
Well, she bought another car, but that's all right. So, we didn't wait for that. Yeah. But the chip was the backup sensors, and my wife did not want to have a car without backup sensors. We
I don't blame her. No.
grow accustomed to those things. No, that's a great explanation and understanding, and I think it's the understanding of all of the interrelationship of this, and now we're being told a little bit more about the interrelationship with tariffs and how they may affect and not affect. I mean, I'll give a plug. I really do like the Orange County Business Journal, but I read all the time the Los Angeles Business Journal as they cover the ports and so many other interesting things. And at the end of last year, the article about you was much more, well, how will the tariffs affect the ultimate outcome of imports into Long Beach and Los Angeles, Southern California? And then the article for this year was you had a record-setting 2025 in terms of goods received at the port. So how do those two stories mesh?
Well, believe it or not, they're very much aligned. I mean, and let me also give a shout out to our dock workers, marine terminal operators. They're the ones who actually move the cargo, and the fact that they were able to do that in record numbers without congestion really speaks to their commitment. But the way the two stories align is when early last year, when most shippers were anticipating a new round of tariffs and changes to trade policy, they decided that they wanted to get ahead of this. So they started advancing their shipments. In the industry, we call that front loading. So typically there used to be 4 seasons in retail. Now there's up to 9 seasons, right? There's fast fashion, for example. And so a lot of these shippers started advancing their shipments, and something that would have hit our port, for example, in spring, started coming in January or in February. And then as the year wore on and the administration started announcing all these new rounds of tariffs, and then our trading partners started announcing their retaliatory tariffs, it just intensified the front loading. So to make a long story short, all the front loading that we saw at the beginning of last year was enough to catapult us to a record year. So even though we saw declines in the second half of 2025, all the front loading at the beginning was so strong that we ended up with a record year, 9.9 million TEUs.
Yeah, well, that's something. And TEUs is really containers.
Yes,
20-foot container.
Exactly. That's an old industry standard.
Yeah.
But
I had to look it up. So it was not because everything referenced TEUs, and I didn't know what it was. So I want to make sure I looked halfway intelligent in front of you. Halfway is all my mark.
You always do your homework.
So share with folks what how your governance structure works. I mean, you're an entity owned by the city of Long Beach, right?
That's correct. So the Port of Long Beach is the harbor department of the city of Long Beach. So we are a member of the city family. We're a department. We're an enterprise department of the city of Long Beach.
Right. Certainly.
And we are governed by 5 harbor commissioners, my 5 bosses. I report directly to them. They are nominated by the mayor, our Mayor Rex Richardson, and confirmed by the city council. So that's the governance structure. They hire a chief executive, myself, who in turn runs the day-to-day operations. And we have a fantastic board, and we have been operating under that model since the beginning.
And when was that?
This was back in 1911.
Wow.
Yeah, 1911. So the Port of Long Beach has been around for 115 years, but I like to say that we think and operate like a 115-year-old startup. It may have to, right? Because we have to stay relevant and competitive.
That is so true. I mean, I think the diversity and the shifting of your workforce, and with automation and other things. I know my daughter, who works here at our company through elementary school, she had a friend whose parents both were dock workers at Long Beach Port. And I think at that time that was a pretty lucrative position because they both were working shifts, and some of them worked extra shifts. And so do you have, as the port increases in volume, are there more manual workers there? I mean, certainly talented, skilled people, but I'm just saying the workforce, has it grown or reduced over the years?
Yeah. So as we add more capacity, right, our plan is to double our throughput by 2050. We're going to need more people, right? The workforce has to increase. And so a big part of our effort to build the port of the future is to develop the workforce of the future. And so we're investing a lot more time and resources, Curt, in 2 ways. Number one, we're attracting youth as young as high school, and we're starting to go even younger than that so that our youth can understand what incredible careers are available in our space, right? Everything in goods movement. We offer internships, scholarships. We pair up our youth with our industry partners. We partner with Long Beach City College, for example, Long Beach Unified School District and Cal State Long Beach. And we're constantly looking for ways to amplify our impact because we're going to need the workforce. And so as we build the port of the future, we invest in infrastructure, we invest in technology and innovation. We need to make sure that we're preparing our workforce as well.
No, I think that's so important, but the workforce is changing, right? I mean, historically, it was much more of a manual job. And today, I think there's a higher use of technology, right? As in terms of all, and the need to be aware of how to operate technology within that.
That's right. And certainly the transition to zero emissions equipment, for example, is also reshaping that. But this is why at the State of the Port, I'm using the word visionary innovation, right? It's a way to maximize the use of technology that doesn't leave anyone behind. It's how do we empower the workforce? How do we put technology in the hands of a worker to make the worker more productive, right? And that's the way that we view it. Right now, of the 6 container terminals in Long Beach, one of them is automated. The others are conventional. And as we build the port of the future, we're going to continue to look for ways to lift up our workforce and make sure that they're reskilled, upskilled, and ready for the jobs of tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And as you talk about technology, the buzzword of technology today is AI, all the things that are being contemplated with that. How is that going to be introduced or supporting the port of the future?
It's a great question, Curt. And to be honest with you, I don't have the answer yet.
Yeah.
AI is evolving so quickly. We're looking at formulating a policy just within our own department on how we're going to define it and how we're going to use it. I mean, the reality is we're all using AI in some form.
Right.
Anytime you do a Google search for anything.
I think you'll see the bio here I have. It's from ChatGPT's.
And what's interesting about that is it's getting more sophisticated.
Right.
It's getting more accurate. And so the question for us, for policymakers and for those of us who lead these enterprise organizations is how do we use it in a way that doesn't create repercussions or impacts to the workforce, right? And that's what I'm very interested in understanding.
Right. And as you, I need to obviously do a little more research and go and look at your port of it in 2050 report because that'd be interesting. And in that, I'm sure you talk about the types of fuels you'll be using.
Yes.
I know along the way you have been a partner in a lot of the hydrogen discussion. And how might that grow into the port operations?
When you look at 2050, right? One of the reasons why I thought 2050 was the right goal line, the new goal line.
Good numbers too.
Right? It's a good round number,
Yeah.
but that's the year that we expect to double our throughput. But that's also the year that the International Maritime Organization has set for the entire shipping industry to decarbonize. Now, they ran into some headwinds last year at the IMO, but that seems to be the target. And so what we've been doing as a leader in the transition to zero emissions is we've been working with ports across the Pacific, Singapore and Shanghai. We're part of 2 different green shipping corridors, along with the Port of Los Angeles. And we're working with our industry partners, these companies that own these ships, these ocean carriers, helping to accelerate that transition. And the reason that's important, this level of coordination, is we need to know what kind of infrastructure they're going to need to transition to these renewable fuels. We already have methanol-powered ships coming to our port complex. LNG, there's a lot of talk about that. Hasn't become commercially viable yet. But we're looking at every possible source of renewable power to get those ships to decarbonize, right? So this form of subnational collaboration is very effective because you're bringing the ports, you're bringing the industry partners, you're bringing all the experts together, right? So that we can, accelerate the transition.
And as people look and see the port impact in terms of the transportation, intermodal channels and such, the cleaner the port gets. People don't realize port emissions historically move all the way up into LA and Orange County, and and beyond. So that's a great benefit to all people being served by the port.
So we're very proud of that. The Port of Long Beach has a distinction of being the very first green port. And credit to our Harbor Commission. They made this bold declaration back in 2005 at a time when no one knew what a green port was. Right. And we've defined it. And in 20 years, Curt, at the same time, from 2005 to 2025, during that same period that we've seen our cargo volumes increase 44%, we've managed to reduce every category of emission to the tune of 98%. Well, remarkable story.
That is. And you're doing a great job there. And I am so happy that you were able to come in today to really share how significant in terms of the overall economy of Southern California the Port of Long Beach is, and really how we all receive a benefit from that. So thank you, Dr. Hacegaba.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
Always a pleasure to see you.